Nathan Cross stared at the pregnancy test in his wife's hand, watching her radiant smile spread across her face like poison through his veins. The plastic stick showed two pink lines, positive. But Nathan knew something Lena didn't know he knew. He'd been shooting blanks for 3 years after a factory accident damaged more than just his pride. "Isn't this amazing, honey?" Lena's voice dripped with false sweetness as she pressed the test against his chest. "We're finally going to be parents." Nathan forced his mouth into what he hoped resembled a smile. "That's incredible." The word tasted like ash. Behind Lena's shoulder, he could see her phone lighting up with text messages. Messages from Miles Rowan, her work friend who'd been coming around for dinner lately, always finding reasons to touch her arm, always laughing just a little too hard at her jokes. The winter wind rattled the windows of their small Cleveland apartment, and Nathan felt something cold settle in his chest that had nothing to do with the weather. 3 months ago, Lena had convinced him to try an open marriage. She'd sold it as saving their relationship, exploring new boundaries, keeping their love fresh. He'd agreed because he loved her, because he thought maybe she was right, maybe he was boring, maybe he needed to be more adventurous. What he hadn't expected was to become invisible in his own life. "I made dinner reservations at Giuseppe's," Lena continued, already moving toward the bedroom. "We need to celebrate properly." Nathan watched her walk away, her hips swaying with a confidence that used to make his heart race. Now it just made him nauseous. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through the photos he'd taken of her text messages last week when she'd left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. "Miles, can't wait to see you tonight." "Nathan working late again?" "Lena, of course. Poor thing doesn't even suspect. Sometimes I feel bad for him, but he's so predictable." "Miles, don't feel bad, babe. You deserve better than some factory worker who can't even satisfy his own wife." "Lena, LOL, stop. But you're right. I need a real man." Nathan's hand shook as he scrolled to the next message thread. This one between Lena and her best friend Carly. "Carly, are you sure about this whole pregnancy thing? What if he finds out it's not his?" "Lena, he won't. Nathan's too trusting, too stupid. Besides, even if he did, what's he going to do? Leave me? He doesn't have the balls." "Carly, I still think you should be more careful. What if—" "Lena, Carly, relax. I've got this handled. Nathan will raise Miles's kid thinking it's his own, and I'll finally have the life I deserve." Miles makes 3 times what Nathan does. Nathan had read those messages 17 times, memorizing every word, every casual cruelty, every laugh at his expense. He'd even saved screenshots, though he wasn't sure why yet. Some instinct told him he'd need them later. The paternity test he'd secretly taken last week sat hidden in his toolbox at work, sealed in an envelope he hadn't opened yet. He already knew what it would say. "Nathan," Lena's voice carried from the bedroom, "can you call Giuseppe's and push our reservation back an hour? I want to look perfect for our announcement." "Sure," he called back, but he didn't move toward the phone. Instead, he walked to the window and looked out at the gray February afternoon. Snow was starting to fall, covering the industrial landscape in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and new. But Nathan knew that underneath, the rust and decay remained. His phone buzzed, a text from Victor, his shift supervisor at the plant. "Victor, heard through the grapevine that Miles from TechFlow was asking questions about your work schedule. Thought you should know." Nathan stared at the message, pieces clicking together in his mind. TechFlow was the company where Lena worked in HR. Miles was gathering intelligence, probably helping Lena plan her meetings, her lies, her betrayals. Another text from Victor. "Also heard he's been bragging at Murphy's bar about some gullible husband he's been cuckolding. Thought you should know that too." Nathan's vision went white around the edges. Murphy's bar. The place where half the blue-collar workers in Cleveland went to drink away their problems. Miles had been there, laughing about Nathan's humiliation with strangers, turning his pain into entertainment. "Ready to go, babe?" Lena appeared in the doorway, stunning in a red dress that Nathan had bought her for their anniversary. She'd chosen it specifically for tonight, he realized, for the announcement of another man's child. "Actually," Nathan said, his voice steadier than he felt, "I need to run by the plant first. Emergency with the night shift." Lena's face fell. "Nathan, this is important. This is about our future." "I know." He grabbed his coat from the chair. "I'll meet you there in an hour." Instead of driving to the restaurant, Nathan drove to the plant. The parking lot was nearly empty. just a few cars belonging to the skeleton crew that kept the machinery running on weekends. He sat in his truck for a long time, engine running, heater blasting, staring at the building where he'd worked for 12 years. 12 years of getting up at 5 a.m., of coming home covered in grease and metal shavings, of building a life with a woman who apparently saw him as nothing more than a paycheck and a cover story. He pulled out his phone and finally opened the envelope containing the paternity test results. Negative. 0% probability of paternity. Nathan laughed, a sound that held no humor. He'd known it would say that, but seeing it in black and white felt like taking a punch to the gut. He took a photo of the results and saved it to his phone, then called Lena. "Where are you?" she answered immediately, her voice sharp with annoyance. "Emergency's going to take longer than I thought. Go ahead and eat without me." "Nathan, this is ridiculous. I'm sitting here alone, looking like an idiot." "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. He was sorry. Sorry for believing in her. Sorry for loving her. Sorry for being the kind of man who could be so easily deceived. "I'll make it up to you." "You better." She hung up without saying goodbye. Nathan sat in his truck for another hour, watching the snow fall and thinking about choices. He could confront her tonight, demand answers, fight for a marriage that was already over. He could pretend he didn't know, raise another man's child, and slowly die inside over the next 20 years. Or he could do something else entirely. He thought about Victor's words from last week. "You're stronger than you know, Nathan. You just ain't been pushed far enough to find out yet." Maybe it was time to find out. Nathan drove to Murphy's bar, a dive that smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams. He found Miles holding court at a corner table, surrounded by a group of men Nathan didn't recognize. Miles was in the middle of a story, gesturing wildly with his beer bottle. "So I tell her, don't worry about your husband, baby. Guys like that don't fight for what's theirs. They just accept whatever scraps you throw them." Miles took a long drink, and sure enough, he lets me come over for dinner like I'm some kind of family friend. Even shook my hand and thanked me for being such a good friend to Lena. The table erupted in laughter. Nathan felt something dark and cold settle in his chest, spreading through his body like ice water. "Best part is," Miles continued, "she's pregnant now. Kid's definitely mine, but she's going to let him think it's his. Poor bastard's going to spend the next 18 years paying for my offspring." More laughter. Nathan ordered a whiskey and listened to Miles tear apart his life for entertainment. He listened to every detail, every cruel joke, every casual dismissal of his humanity, and he recorded it all on his phone. When Miles finally finished his performance, Nathan approached the table. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Could I borrow your friend for a minute?" Miles looked up, his face flushed with alcohol and arrogance. "Sorry, do I know you?" "I'm Nathan Cross, Lena's husband." The table went silent. Miles's expression shifted from confusion to something that might have been fear, but quickly masked itself as amusement. "Well, well," Miles said, standing up. He was taller than Nathan, broader, clearly someone who spent serious time in the gym. "The famous Nathan, Lena's told me so much about you." "I'm sure she has." Nathan's voice remained calm, conversational. "I was hoping we could have a private conversation." Miles laughed. "Sure, why not? This should be interesting." They walked to a quieter corner of the bar, past the pool tables and the broken jukebox. Miles leaned against the wall, supremely confident, like a man who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. "So," Miles said, "what's on your mind, Nathan?" "Having second thoughts about the whole open marriage thing?" Nathan studied the other man's face, noting the smug smile, the way he held his shoulders like he owned the world. "Actually, I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Miles laughed. "For what?" "For showing me who my wife really is, for helping me understand what I've been too blind to see." Miles's smile faltered slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." Nathan pulled out his phone and played back the recording he'd just made. Miles's voice filled the small space between them. "Kid's definitely mine, but she's going to let him think it's his. Poor bastard's going to spend the next 18 years paying for my offspring." The color drained from Miles's face. "You recorded me? Public place, public conversation, completely legal." Nathan slipped the phone back into his pocket. "I also have the paternity test results. Turns out you're right. The kid is definitely yours." Miles tried to recover his composure. "Look, Nathan, I think there might be some misunderstanding here. No misunderstanding. Nathan's voice remained perfectly level. I know exactly what's been going on. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Miles straightened up, his confidence returning. We're not going to do anything. You're going to walk away and pretend this conversation never happened. Or what? Miles stepped closer, close enough that Nathan could smell the beer on his breath. Or I'll tell Lena that her husband's been stalking and harassing me. I'll tell her you threatened me. She'll believe me over you. We both know that. Nathan nodded slowly. You're probably right. She probably would believe you. Damn right she would. But here's the thing, Miles. Nathan's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm not the same man who shook your hand at dinner last month. That man was weak, trusting, pathetic. He cared what people thought of him. He wanted to be liked, to be accepted. Miles took a step back, something in Nathan's tone making him uneasy. That man died about an hour ago, Nathan continued. What's standing here now is something else entirely. Something that doesn't give a damn about being liked or accepted. Something that has nothing left to lose. You're trying to scare me, Miles said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm trying to warn you. Nathan pulled out his phone again and showed Miles the screen. I have 17 text messages between you and my wife. I have photos of credit card statements showing hotel visits. I have recordings of you bragging about your conquest to complete strangers, and I have a paternity test that proves you're the father of the child she's carrying. Miles's face had gone completely white. What do you want? I want you to understand that the game has changed. You thought you were playing with some hapless factory worker who'd roll over and take whatever you dished out, but you're not. You're playing with someone who has absolutely nothing left to lose and all the time in the world to make you pay for what you've done. Nathan turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Miles, that recording I played for you? I've already sent copies to my lawyer, my buddy at the police department, and a few other interested parties. Insurance policy. He walked away, leaving Miles standing alone in the corner, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd been swimming in shark-infested waters. Nathan drove home slowly, thinking about next steps. The old Nathan would have gone home and confronted Lena, would have demanded explanations and apologies, would have tried to salvage something from the wreckage of his marriage. But the old Nathan was gone, replaced by someone harder, colder, more focused. Someone who understood that revenge was a dish best served with careful planning and perfect timing. When he got home, Lena was waiting for him, her face tight with anger. Where have you been? She demanded. I sat at that restaurant for 2 hours like an idiot. I'm sorry, Nathan said, and he was. He was sorry for a lot of things, but not for what he was about to do. Sorry doesn't fix this, Nathan. This was supposed to be special. This was supposed to be about our future. Our future? Nathan nodded thoughtfully. You know what, Lena? You're absolutely right. We need to talk about our future. Something in his tone made her pause. What do you mean? I mean, it's time we were honest with each other. Completely honest. Lena's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Nathan sat down on the couch, suddenly feeling very tired. I'm talking about Miles. I'm talking about the baby. I'm talking about the fact that you think I'm too stupid to figure out what's been going on right under my nose. Lena's face went white, then red, then white again. I don't know what you're... The baby isn't mine, Lena. We both know that. The question is, what are we going to do about it? For a long moment, they stared at each other across the living room. Nathan could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how much he knew, how much he could prove, what stories she could tell that would get her out of this. Nathan, she said finally, her voice soft and pleading. Let me explain. I'm listening. It's not what you think. Miles and I, yes, we've been seeing each other, but it's not serious. It's just physical. You and I, we're building a life together. We're having a baby together. Except we're not. Nathan pulled out his phone and showed her the paternity test results. 0% probability of paternity. The baby is Miles's, not mine. Lena stared at the screen, her face crumpling. When did you... Does it matter? Nathan put the phone away. The question is, what happens now? Nathan, please. Tears were streaming down her face. I made a mistake. I was confused. I was scared about our marriage. I thought maybe if we both explored other options... You thought maybe you could have your cake and eat it too. You thought maybe you could keep me around to pay the bills and provide stability while you had your fun with Miles? That's not true, isn't it? Nathan stood up and walked to the window. You convinced me to try an open marriage, but you were already sleeping with Miles before we ever had that conversation. You got pregnant by another man and planned to let me raise his child as my own. You laughed about it with your friends, joked about how stupid and gullible I was. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Nathan turned back to face her. I understand that you never loved me. I understand that you saw me as a safety net, a backup plan, a reliable source of income while you pursued what you really wanted. That's not true. I do love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the steady paycheck, the nice apartment, the man who asks no questions and makes no demands, but you don't love me. If you did, you couldn't have done what you did. Lena was sobbing now, makeup running down her cheeks. Nathan, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can't do anything, Nathan said quietly. There is no we anymore. There's just you and your choices and me and mine. What are you saying? I'm saying I want a divorce. The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Lena's crying stopped abruptly, her face hardening. Fine, she said, her voice turning cold. You want a divorce? You'll get one. But don't think you're going to get away with this easily. I'll take half of everything you own. I'll take the apartment, the car, the savings account, and you'll pay child support for the next 18 years. Nathan smiled, an expression that held no warmth. Actually, I won't. What do you mean? I mean the paternity test proves the child isn't mine. No paternity, no child support obligation. Basic family law. Lena's face went white again. You can't do that. You can't just abandon a child. I'm not abandoning anything. I'm simply refusing to take responsibility for another man's actions. Miles is the father. He can pay for his own offspring. Miles won't. He's not ready for that kind of responsibility. Then you probably should have thought about that before you slept with him. Lena stared at him like she'd never seen him before. Who are you? This isn't the man I married. You're right, Nathan said. The man you married was weak, trusting, and naive. He believed in love and fidelity and keeping promises, but you killed him. You killed him slowly, day by day, with your lies and your betrayal and your casual cruelty. What's standing here now is what you made. Nathan, I'll be staying at Victor's place for the next few weeks while I find my own apartment. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce proceedings. I'd suggest you get your own attorney. Nathan walked toward the bedroom to pack a bag, but Lena grabbed his arm. Wait, she said, her voice desperate. What about the baby? What about our life together? What about everything we've built? Nathan looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up at her face. What about it? You can't just throw it all away. I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. He pulled free of her grip and continued toward the bedroom. Behind him, he heard her phone buzzing with text messages. Probably Miles, wondering how their secret had been exposed. Nathan smiled grimly as he pulled his suitcase from the closet. Let them wonder. Let them panic. Let them try to figure out how to explain their way out of this mess. He was done being the patsy, done being the fool, done being the man who got played while everyone else laughed. It was time for the other side to find out what it felt like to be on the receiving end of betrayal. Nathan packed quickly and efficiently, taking only what he needed. As he prepared to leave, Lena appeared in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. This isn't over, she said, her voice shaking with rage. You think you can just walk away and leave me to deal with this alone? You think you can just disappear and pretend none of this happened? I think, Nathan said, zipping up his suitcase, that you and Miles are about to find out what it's like to live with the consequences of your actions. What's that supposed to mean? Nathan paused at the bedroom door. It means the game has changed, Lena. You thought you were playing with someone who'd roll over and take whatever you dished out, but you weren't. You were playing with someone who has absolutely nothing left to lose. He walked past her toward the front door, but she followed him. Nathan, wait. Please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Miles. Too late. Nathan opened the door and stepped into the hallway. You made your choice. Now, you get to live with it. As he walked away, he heard her calling his name, heard her pleading for him to come back, to give her another chance. But Nathan didn't turn around. He had work to do, plans to make, a new life to build from the ashes of his old one. The man who'd walked into that apartment was gone forever. What walked out was something harder, colder, more focused. Something that understood that sometimes the only way to win was to make sure everyone else lost. Nathan drove to Victor's house, his mind already working through the next phase of his plan. He had evidence, he had legal standing, and he had something even more valuable, the element of surprise. Lena and Miles thought they were dealing with the same old Nathan, the pushover who'd take whatever they dished out. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Victor lived in a small house on the south side of Cleveland, a blue-collar neighborhood where people minded their own business and asked few questions. Nathan pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment, collecting his thoughts. Victor opened the door before Nathan could knock, as if he'd been waiting. "Rough night?" Victor asked, noting the suitcase in Nathan's hand. "Getting rougher." Nathan stepped inside, grateful for the warmth. "I might need that couch for a few weeks." "It's yours." Victor poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to Nathan. "Want to talk about it?" Nathan told him everything. The pregnancy, the paternity test, the recording from the bar, the confrontation with Lena. Victor listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or grunting his understanding. "So what's your play?" Victor asked when Nathan finished. "I'm going to destroy them." "Legally?" "Completely legally. I'm going to use their own actions against them, turn their weapons into mine. By the time I'm done, they'll wish they'd never heard my name." Victor smiled grimly. "About time you grew some teeth. What do you need?" "A plan, a good lawyer, and time to execute it properly." "I know a lawyer. Real Shark specializes in divorce cases where one party's been screwing around. As for time," Victor raised his glass, "take all the time you need." Nathan spent the next week planning. He researched divorce law, compiled evidence, and began building his case. He also started working out, hitting the gym Victor recommended, channeling his anger into physical strength and mental focus. The gym was in a rough part of town, the kind of place where serious people went to do serious work. No mirrors, no fancy equipment, just weights and sweat and the kind of atmosphere that forged character out of pain. Nathan had never been a fighter, but he discovered he had a natural aptitude for it. Maybe it was the anger, maybe it was the focus, but he found himself improving rapidly. The physical activity helped him think clearly, helped him plan his next moves. 2 weeks after leaving Lena, Nathan received a call from her lawyer. "Mr. Cross? This is Janet Morrison. I represent your wife in the divorce proceedings. I understand you've made some rather serious allegations." "I haven't made any allegations," Nathan replied calmly. "I've simply presented evidence. Evidence that you obtained through questionable means. Evidence that I obtained through completely legal means. Public conversations, unlocked phones, shared credit card statements. Your client should have been more careful." There was a pause. "Mr. Cross, I think we can work something out here. My client is willing to be reasonable about the property division if you're willing to be reasonable about the paternity issue. The paternity issue isn't negotiable. DNA doesn't lie. Mr. Cross, surely you understand that this child will need support regardless of its biological parentage. You and my client were married when the child was conceived. The child was conceived during an affair. I have evidence of that affair, including recordings and text messages. I also have a paternity test that excludes me as the father. Your client committed adultery and became pregnant by another man. That's not my responsibility." Another pause. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss this more productively. I'll meet with you in court. Have a nice day." Nathan hung up and smiled. They were getting nervous, looking for ways to compromise, to find middle ground. But Nathan wasn't interested in compromise. He was interested in justice. That evening, he received a text from an unknown number. "This is Miles. We need to talk." Nathan stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I have nothing to say to you. Please, just 5 minutes." Nathan almost deleted the message, then reconsidered. Sometimes it was useful to know what the enemy was thinking. "Murphy's Bar, 1 hour." Nathan arrived at Murphy's to find Miles sitting alone at a corner table, looking haggard and nervous. The confident, swaggering man from 2 weeks ago was gone, replaced by someone who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Thank you for coming," Miles said as Nathan sat down. "You have 5 minutes. Look, I know you're angry and you have every right to be. What happened between Lena and me? It got out of hand. We never meant for it to go this far. You never meant to get caught. That's not... Miles ran his hands through his hair. Okay, maybe that's part of it. But the point is, we can work this out. We're all adults here. I'm listening. Lena and I, we've ended things. It's over. She wants to work on her marriage, wants to try again with you. And I'm willing to step aside completely. No contact, no involvement. You can raise the child as your own. And I'll never interfere. Nathan studied Miles's face, noting the desperation there, the fear. What's in it for you? I just want this whole mess to go away. I want to move on with my life. Your life. Nathan leaned back in his chair. Tell me about your life, Miles. Tell me about your job, your reputation, your future plans. Miles shifted uncomfortably. I don't see how that's relevant. It's relevant because I'm trying to understand why you're here, hat in hand, begging me to make a deal. 2 weeks ago, you were laughing about me with your friends, bragging about cuckolding some gullible factory worker. Now you're practically crying in your beer. What changed? Miles's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Nathan pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. I've been thinking about who else might find that recording interesting. Your boss, for instance. I hear TechFlow has a pretty strict policy about employees engaging in behavior that reflects poorly on the company. You wouldn't. I would. In fact, I'm planning to, unless you give me a reason not to. Miles stared at him, realization dawning. You want something? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to understand that you can't just destroy someone's life and walk away whistling. I want you to understand that you picked the wrong man to mess with. What do you want me to do? I want you to tell the truth. I want you to admit on the record that you had an affair with my wife. I want you to admit that you're the father of her child. I want you to take responsibility for your actions. I can't do that. My job, my reputation, your job and your reputation are about to be destroyed anyway. The only question is whether you cooperate or whether I have to do this the hard way. Miles was quiet for a long moment, staring into his beer. If I cooperate, what happens to the recording? The recording stays where it is. But I won't actively distribute it to your employer or your friends. Much? I might mention it in my divorce proceedings, public record and all that. Miles closed his eyes. And if I don't cooperate, then I make sure everyone you know gets a copy. Your boss, your coworkers, your family, your friends. I'll post it on social media, send it to the local news, make sure it gets maximum exposure. You're destroying my life. I'm giving you a choice. You can tell the truth and face the consequences like a man, or you can keep lying and face much worse consequences. Up to you. Miles was quiet for another long moment. Finally, he looked up at Nathan with something that might have been respect. You're not who I thought you were. No, Nathan agreed. I'm not. 2 weeks ago, I was a man who believed in fairness, who thought if you treated people with respect, they'd treat you the same way. I was wrong. So what are you now? Nathan stood up and dropped a $10 bill on the table. I'm the man who's going to make sure you and Lena get exactly what you deserve. As Nathan walked away, he heard Miles calling after him, but he didn't turn around. He had other plans to make, other moves to execute. The next morning, Nathan's lawyer called with good news. Miles Rowan signed an affidavit admitting paternity and acknowledging the affair, the lawyer said. He also agreed to pay child support directly to your wife, removing any financial obligation from you. What about the divorce settlement? With the adultery documented and the paternity issue resolved, your wife's lawyer is recommending she accept a minimal settlement. She keeps her personal belongings and any assets she brought into the marriage. You keep everything else. Nathan smiled. What about the apartment? It's in your name, you've been paying the rent, and you have no legal obligation to provide housing for her and her companion's child. She'll need to find her own place. Perfect. Nathan had been hoping for exactly this outcome. Lena would soon discover that her actions had consequences, that her comfortable life was about to become much less comfortable. But Nathan wasn't done. He had more moves to make, more justice to serve. That evening, he went to the gym and worked out with unusual intensity, pushing his body to its limits. The physical exertion helped him think, helped him plan his next moves. He was spotting for another member when he noticed a familiar face across the gym. Miles, looking uncomfortable and out of place, was attempting to use the bench press with poor form and too much weight. Nathan finished his set and walked over. Need a spotter? Miles looked up, startled. Nathan? What are you doing here? Working out, you? I thought I'd try to get in shape. Start over, new leaf and all that. Nathan nodded. Good for you. But you're going to hurt yourself with that form. Here, let me show you. For the next 20 minutes, Nathan taught Miles proper lifting technique, corrected his form, and helped him work through a basic routine. It was surreal, training the man who'd destroyed his marriage, but Nathan had a plan. Thanks, Miles said as they finished. I didn't expect, after everything. We're not friends, Nathan said quietly. We'll never be friends. But I'm not going to let you hurt yourself through ignorance. Miles nodded, looking confused but grateful. Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan continued to encounter Miles at the gym. Each time he offered advice, spotted him on difficult lifts, and gradually built a strange sort of rapport. Miles began to relax around him, began to trust him, which was exactly what Nathan wanted. 3 weeks after their first encounter at the gym, Nathan suggested they spar in the boxing ring. You're getting stronger, he said. Want to see how you handle yourself in a real situation? Miles hesitated. I don't know. I've never really fought anyone. It's just sparring, headgear, mouth guards, light contact. Good way to test your conditioning. Miles eventually agreed, and they stepped into the ring. Nathan had been boxing for a month now, training with serious intent, learning from men who'd been fighting their whole lives. Miles had been lifting weights for 2 weeks. The fight lasted 30 seconds. Nathan landed a straight right to Miles's solar plexus, followed by a left hook to his ribs, then stepped back and watched as Miles crumpled to the canvas, gasping for air. You okay? Nathan asked, extending a hand to help him up. Miles took the hand, his face red with embarrassment. I think I'm done for today. Sure thing. You did good for your first time. But Nathan wasn't done. As Miles was leaving the gym, Nathan called out to him. Hey, Miles. One more thing. Miles turned back, still looking shaken. That recording I made of you bragging about sleeping with my wife? I lied. I didn't just send it to my lawyer and the police. Miles's face went pale. What do you mean? I sent it to your boss, your coworkers, your family, and about 50 other people. Should start making the rounds on social media any time now. Miles stared at him, realization dawning. You planned this, all of this. The gym, the sparring, being friendly. I planned to give you a chance to do the right thing. You chose to lie, to cheat, to destroy my life for your own amusement. So I decided to return the favor. You bastard. Yeah, Nathan said. I am. And you made me that way. Miles lunged at him, but Nathan was ready. He sidestepped easily and watched as Miles stumbled past him, off balance and humiliated. You might want to check your phone, Nathan said as Miles stormed out. I think you're going to have some interesting messages. Nathan was right. By the time Miles reached his car, his phone was buzzing with calls and texts from coworkers, friends, and family members who'd received the recording. Nathan watched through the gym window as Miles sat in his car, reading message after message, his face growing paler with each one. The next morning, Nathan received a call from Victor. Turn on Channel 8 News, Victor said. You're going to want to see this. Nathan flipped on the television just in time to catch the business segment. The anchor was reporting on TechFlow's decision to terminate a sales director for conduct unbecoming of company values after a recording surfaced of the employee bragging about an extramarital affair. Miles Rowan was dismissed immediately after company executives reviewed audio evidence of Mr. Rowan discussing his affair with a married coworker, the anchor reported. TechFlow released a statement saying they maintain the highest standards of professional conduct and will not tolerate behavior that reflects poorly on the organization. Nathan smiled and turned off the television. One down. His phone rang. Lena. What did you do? She screamed as soon as he answered. Miles just got fired. They're saying you sent some recording to his boss. I did. How could you do that? He has a mortgage, car payments. He should have thought about that before he decided to humiliate me in public. This is insane. You're destroying people's lives. I'm giving people exactly what they deserve. No more, no less. Nathan, please. I know we hurt you, but this has gone too far. Miles didn't deserve to lose his job. Didn't he? He bragged to strangers about cuckolding me? He laughed about how gullible and pathetic I was. He turned my humiliation into entertainment. And now he's surprised that there are consequences? People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Lena. This was a deliberate, calculated campaign to destroy my life while using me for financial security. You both made your choices. Now you get to live with them. What about me? What about the baby? Nathan paused. What about them? I need help. I can't afford the apartment on my own, especially not with Miles out of work. Then I suggest you find a job that pays better. Or move somewhere cheaper, or ask your friend Carly for help. Carly? What does Carly have to do with this? Nathan smiled. You'll find out soon enough. He hung up before she could respond. He had one more move to make, one more piece of justice to serve. Carly worked as an insurance adjuster for a major company downtown. She'd been Lena's best friend since college, her confidant, her enabler. She was also the one who'd encouraged Lena to pursue the open marriage, who'd helped her plan the deception, who'd laughed along with every cruel joke about Nathan's gullibility. Nathan had done his research on Carly, too. He'd discovered that she'd been skimming small amounts from insurance settlements for years, padding her own pockets while denying claims to people who desperately needed help. It was a sophisticated scheme, never too much, never too obvious, but consistent and profitable. Nathan had also discovered that Carly had been planning to name him as a beneficiary on a life insurance policy she'd taken out on Lena, with the understanding that if anything happened to Lena, Carly would split the payout with whoever helped. Arrange the accident. It was a half-formed plan, more wishful thinking than actual conspiracy, but it was enough. Nathan had recorded conversations where Carly discussed how much easier Lena's life would be if Nathan just disappeared, how unfortunate it would be if he had an accident at the factory. Nathan packaged all of this evidence, the insurance fraud, the recorded conversations, the life insurance scheme, and sent it to Carly's supervisor, the State Insurance Commission, and the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. Carly was arrested the next day. The news broke on Thursday. By Friday, Lena was calling Nathan every hour, begging him to stop, pleading with him to show mercy. Carly had nothing to do with our problems, she sobbed into the phone. She was just being a friend, just listening to me vent. She was encouraging you to commit insurance fraud and discussing ways to make me disappear. That's not friendship, Lena. That's conspiracy. She never would have actually done anything? Maybe not, but she thought about it, planned for it, and recorded herself talking about it. That's enough for the FBI. This is madness. You're destroying everyone around me. I'm protecting myself from people who wanted to destroy me. There's a difference. What about us? What about our marriage? There is no marriage. There is no us. There's just you and the consequences of your choices. Lena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more calculating. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won? I think I've survived. I think I've made sure that the people who tried to destroy me understand that actions have consequences. Well, congratulations, Nathan. You've won. Miles is unemployed and facing bankruptcy. Carly's in jail. And I'm about to lose my apartment and have my baby in poverty. Are you proud of yourself? Nathan considered the question seriously. Yes, he said finally. I am. You're a monster. You made me one. No, Lena said, her voice venomous. You always were one. I just never saw it before. Maybe you're right, Nathan said. Maybe I was always capable of this. Maybe I just needed the right motivation to bring it out. I hope you rot in hell. Maybe I will. But I'll rot there, knowing that justice was served. Nathan hung up and stared out the window of his new apartment, a nicer place than the one he'd shared with Lena, paid for with the money he'd saved, by not having to support another man's child. The sun was setting over Cleveland, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. His phone buzzed with a text from Victor. Drinks tonight? Heard you wrapped up your business. Nathan smiled and typed back, Sure. I have something to celebrate. He did have something to celebrate. He'd taken 3 people who'd conspired to destroy his life and turned their own weapons against them. Miles was unemployed and unemployable, his reputation destroyed. Carly was facing federal charges for insurance fraud and conspiracy. And Lena was about to discover what it was like to face the world without a safety net, without someone to catch her when she fell. But as Nathan got ready to meet Victor, he realized something had changed in him during this whole process. The anger was gone, burned away by the heat of revenge. The pain was gone too, replaced by something colder and more permanent. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a stranger, someone harder, more focused, more ruthless than the man who'd walked into that apartment 6 weeks ago. Someone who understood that the world was full of predators and prey, and that the only way to survive was to make sure you weren't the one being hunted. The old Nathan was dead, killed by betrayal and humiliation. What stood in his place was something new, something forged in the fire of injustice and tempered by the cold steel of revenge. At Murphy's bar, Victor was waiting with 2 whiskeys and a grim smile. "So," Victor said, raising his glass, "how does it feel? How does what feel? Justice, revenge, whatever you want to call it." Nathan considered the question as he sipped his whiskey. "Empty," he said finally. "I thought it would feel better than this." "That's because you're a good man, Nathan. Good men don't enjoy destroying people, even when they deserve it." "Am I still a good man, after everything I've done?" Victor studied his face. "You protected yourself from people who wanted to destroy you. You used their own actions against them. You didn't kill anyone, didn't frame anyone for crimes they didn't commit. You just made sure the truth came out and justice was served." "I destroyed 3 lives. They destroyed their own lives. You just made sure they faced the consequences." Nathan nodded, but he wasn't sure he believed it. He'd crossed lines in the past 6 weeks, done things the old Nathan never would have done. He'd become someone harder, colder, more calculating. "What now?" Victor asked. "Now I rebuild. New life, new start, new identity." "Any regrets?" Nathan thought about Lena, crying in their old apartment alone and pregnant with another man's child. He thought about Miles, checking the want ads with a reputation that would follow him everywhere he went. He thought about Carly, sitting in a federal holding cell, waiting for trial. "No," he said finally. "No regrets." 3 months later, Nathan was settling into his new life. He'd been promoted at the factory, had moved into a better apartment, had started dating a woman named Sarah who worked as a nurse at the local hospital. She was kind, honest, straightforward, everything Lena hadn't been. He was leaving the gym one evening when he saw a familiar figure sitting on a bench outside. Lena, heavily pregnant now, looking tired and worn. "Hello, Nathan," she said as he approached. "Lena." He stopped but didn't sit down. "How are you doing?" "As well as can be expected. I'm living with my sister now, working part-time at a call center. Miles moved back in with his parents in Cincinnati. He couldn't find work here." Nathan nodded but said nothing. "The baby's due next month," she continued. "It's a boy. Congratulations. I wanted to ask you something." She looked up at him and he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the defeat. "Do you ever think about what might have been? If we'd made different choices, been honest with each other?" Nathan considered the question. "Sometimes, but not often." "Do you hate me?" "No," Nathan said and realized he meant it. "I don't hate you. I don't feel anything for you anymore." "That's worse than hate." "Maybe, but it's honest." Lena was quiet for a moment. "You know, I used to think you were weak, boring, predictable. I thought I was so much smarter than you, so much more sophisticated. You were wrong. Yes, I was. You're not weak at all. You're terrifying." Nathan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You taught me to be terrifying. You and Miles and Carly. You showed me what the world was really like, how people really treat each other when they think they can get away with it. I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix anything. What would fix it?" Nathan thought about the question seriously. "Nothing. Some things can't be fixed, Lena. Some betrayals are too deep, some damage too complete. You didn't just cheat on me, you tried to make me complicit in my own humiliation. You tried to turn me into a joke, a fool, a man who'd raise another man's child while that man laughed at him behind his back. I know. You destroyed something in me that can never be repaired. The man you married, the man who trusted you, who believed in you, who loved you unconditionally, that man is gone forever. What's left is what you made." Lena started crying, quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks without sound. "I know this doesn't matter," she said, "but I really did love you. Part of me anyway." "Maybe you did, but not enough to keep you from destroying us both." Nathan turned to leave, then paused. "Lena?" "Yes?" Take care of yourself. And the baby. Whatever else happened between us, that child doesn't deserve to suffer for our mistakes. Thank you. Nathan walked away without looking back. He had a new life to build, a new identity to forge. The past was finished, buried, done with. 6 months later, Nathan married Sarah in a small ceremony at Victor's house. It was a simple affair. Just a few friends, no family, no elaborate speeches about love and forever. Nathan had learned to be suspicious of grand gestures and eternal promises. This was about partnership, companionship, mutual respect. Sarah understood about his past, about what had happened with Lena. She'd seen the hard edges that experience had carved into him, the careful way he protected himself, the walls he'd built around his heart. But she also saw the man underneath, damaged but not broken, scarred but still capable of kindness. "Do you think you'll ever trust completely again?" she asked him on their wedding night. "No," Nathan said honestly, "but I think I can learn to trust enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough to be happy. Enough to build something real with someone who deserves it." Sarah smiled and kissed him. "I can work with enough." Nathan held her close and thought about the journey that had brought him here, from naive husband to calculating avenger to whatever he was now. He'd lost his innocence, his faith in human nature, his belief that good intentions were enough to protect you from the world's cruelties. But he'd gained something too, the knowledge that he was stronger than he'd ever imagined, that he could survive betrayal and come out the other side intact. He'd learned that sometimes the only way to win was to make sure everyone else lost, that sometimes justice required getting your hands dirty. The old Nathan would have been horrified by what he'd become. But the old Nathan was weak, trusting, vulnerable. The new Nathan was harder, smarter, more careful. He'd traded innocence for wisdom, trust for vigilance, love for survival. It wasn't a fair trade, but it was the only one available. 2 years later, Nathan heard through Victor that Lena had moved to another state, that she was working as a receptionist and raising her son alone. Miles had found work as a car salesman, making a fraction of what he'd earned before, still living with his parents. Carly had served 18 months in federal prison and was working at a gas station, trying to rebuild her life. Nathan felt nothing when he heard these updates. No satisfaction, no pity, no regret. They were chapters in a book he'd closed, people from a life he'd left behind. He had a new life now, a better life. He had a wife who respected him, a job that valued him, friends who understood him. He had learned to protect himself without becoming cruel, to be strong without being destructive. But he never forgot the lessons Lena had taught him. He never forgot that people were capable of breathtaking cruelty, that trust was a luxury he could no longer afford, that the only person he could truly count on was himself. Late at night, when Sarah was asleep beside him, Nathan would sometimes think about the man he'd been before, the man who'd believed in love and loyalty and keeping promises. That man had been weak, naive, foolish. But he'd also been capable of a kind of pure, uncomplicated happiness that Nathan knew he'd never feel again. It was the price of wisdom, the cost of survival. Some innocence, once lost, could never be recovered. Nathan was at peace with that trade. He'd learned to live without illusions, to find satisfaction in smaller, more reliable pleasures. He'd learned that happiness didn't require trust, that love didn't require vulnerability, that a good life could be built on the foundation of careful vigilance and earned respect. On his 40th birthday, Sarah threw him a small party at their house. Victor was there, along with a few other friends from work and the gym. It was a simple celebration, good food, cold beer, easy conversation among people who understood each other. As Nathan looked around the room at the people who'd chosen to be part of his life, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine contentment. Not the naive happiness of his younger self, but something deeper and more durable. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked, appearing beside him with a fresh beer. "Just this, all of this." Nathan gestured around the room. 5 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this life. Better or worse than what you had before? Nathan considered the question seriously. Different, smaller maybe, but more honest, more real. Any regrets? About the past? No. About what I had to become to survive it? He paused. Sometimes. Sarah nodded. She understood. She'd seen him in his darker moments, when the weight of what he'd done pressed down on him like a physical thing. She'd learned not to ask too many questions about those times, just to be present, to remind him that he was more than the sum of his worst actions. "You know what I think?" she said. "What?" "I think you're exactly who you're supposed to be. Not who you wanted to be, maybe, but who you needed to become." Nathan smiled and pulled her close. "I love you," he said, and meant it. It was a different kind of love than what he'd felt for Lena. More careful, more guarded, but also more honest. Love without illusions, affection without fantasy. "I love you too," Sarah replied. "All of you. Even the parts you think are broken." Later that night, after the guests had gone home and Sarah had fallen asleep, Nathan stood on his back porch looking out at the city lights. Cleveland stretched out before him, the same city where his old life had died and his new one had been born. Somewhere out there, Lena was probably putting her son to bed, reading him a story, tucking him in. Somewhere else, Miles was probably lying awake wondering how different his life might have been if he'd made different choices. And somewhere else, Carly was probably working a late shift, trying to rebuild a reputation that would never fully recover. Nathan felt no satisfaction in their struggles, no pleasure in their pain. Justice had been served, debts had been paid, lessons had been learned. The scales were balanced. He thought about the recording he still had of Miles bragging about the affair, the evidence he'd used to destroy 3 lives. He'd kept it all these years, a reminder of what he was capable of when pushed too far. But he didn't need reminders anymore. The knowledge was part of him now, woven into his DNA like scar tissue. Nathan walked back inside and locked the door behind him. He checked the security system, turned off the lights, and went upstairs to where Sarah was sleeping peacefully in their bed. As he settled in beside her, Nathan thought about the man he'd been and the man he'd become. The journey between those 2 points had been brutal, transformative, necessary. He'd lost his innocence but gained his strength. He'd sacrificed his trust but earned his wisdom. The old Nathan would have forgiven Lena, would have tried to work things out, would have raised another man's child and spent the rest of his life being grateful for scraps of affection from a woman who despised him. The new Nathan had destroyed 3 lives and rebuilt his own from the ashes. Both men were gone now, replaced by someone harder and softer at the same time. Someone who understood the world's cruelties but still chose to build something good from the ruins of his former life. Nathan closed his eyes and let sleep take him, secure in the knowledge that he'd learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to become someone you never wanted to be. But if the alternative is letting others destroy you for their amusement, sometimes that's a trade worth making. Nathan Cross slept peacefully, and he dreamed of nothing at all.